No, you have approached Mount Zion and the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and countless angels in festal gathering, and the assembly of the firstborn enrolled in heaven, and God, the judge of all, and the spirits of the just made perfect, and Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and the sprinkled blood that speaks more eloquently than that of Abel. The word of the Lord.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. On a Sabbath, Jesus went to dine at the home of one of the leading Pharisees, and the people there were observing him carefully. He told a parable to those who had been invited, noticing how they were choosing the places of honor at the table. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not recline at table in the place of honor. A more distinguished guest than you may have been invited by him, and the host who invited both of you may approach you and say, "Give your place to this man." And then you would proceed with embarrassment to take the lowest place. Rather, when you are invited, go and take the lowest place, so that when the host comes to you, he may say, "My friend, move up to a higher position." Then you will enjoy the esteem of your companions at the table. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. Then he said to the host who invited him, "When you hold a lunch or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or your wealthy neighbors, in case they may invite you back and you have repayment. Rather, when you hold a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind. Blessed indeed will you be because of their inability to repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." The Gospel of the Lord. Our readings today focus on humility. From our first reading, "My child, conduct your affairs with humility," to this passage in our gospel, "When you are invited, go and take the lowest place. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted." Genuine humility makes for very strong, very grounded people. But I think humility is one of the most misunderstood virtues that we have. So humility is not walking around with your head bowed down. It's not being extremely quiet and submissive and weak. "Oh wow, that person's so humble, they're so quiet." It's not downplaying things that you're good at and gifts that you have. Humility is recognizing the truth. It's living in reality. And sometimes that means being very strong and very commanding. And other times it means being willing to take one on the chin. So for Jesus, humility meant preaching the truth about who God is, even when it was tough, even when he was challenging people of his time and challenging the authorities of his time, even when he was taking guff for spending time with sinners and unclean people. And he was anything but quiet about that. But he's the most humble person who ever walked the face of this earth. But humility for Jesus also meant allowing himself to be crucified so he could save us. So sometimes humility is being strong and loud and commanding, and sometimes it's about being willing to take one on the chin. So the word humility comes from the Latin humus, which means earth, earthy, on the ground. So a person who has, both feet on the ground, someone who's the salt of the earth, someone who's very down to earth, is a humble person. So when Pope Francis, goes and washes the feet of kids at a juvenile detention center, he's acknowledging a truth in that. And the truth is that he's no better than any of these kids. In the eyes of God, we are all children of God. We're all exactly the same. It doesn't matter if you're a pope or a young murderer. We're the same in the eyes of God. And yet, Pope Francis is also willing to challenge the world by saying that many people are too materialistic, People care more about their own money and their own possessions than about taking care of the poor and those people on the edges of society. And he speaks loudly about that. And that's being humble too. He's speaking the truth in that instance with confidence, with strength. And I think for us, humility is really it's an interior attitude. It's having both feet on the ground, which means recognizing that, all of our money, all of our personality, all of our dashing good looks, all of our gifts, everything that we have ultimately came from someone else. If it wouldn't have been for your parents taking care of you when all you could do was eat, cry, and poop, you wouldn't be where you are right now. If it weren't for good teachers in your life and helpful friends and coaches and mentors who pushed you at different areas in life and encouraged you at different times, you wouldn't be who you are right now. It takes humility to say that everything I have ultimately came from somewhere. And ultimate humility is saying that everything I have ultimately comes from God. All these people in my life, all these circumstances that led to who I am, those are all blessings and gifts from God. So even all these things that I have, they all ultimately come from God. That's having a humble attitude. So if someone says you're so great at something, don't say, "Oh no, I'm no good at that." Well, maybe you are. So just say thank you. And then in your heart, turn to the Lord and say, "Lord, thanks for making me good at that. Thanks for giving me that gift." And so I just leave you with the thought that if you dare to pray for humility this week, if you dare to pray for humility, God will give you lots of opportunities to be humble, which means that you're going to come across lots of ways where you'll be relying on yourself. The Lord will show you lots of ways where you try and kind of seek the affirmation of other people for your worth instead of looking to God. You'll come across lots of ways where you're scared. You're scared to speak the truth in confidence and strength. You'll come across lots of ways where you feel slighted in one way or another, and you get kind of defensive, kind of standoffish, try to protect yourself, and you're not willing to just take one on the chin. So I'd just warn you, if you dare to listen to these readings and dare to pray for humility this week, it'll hurt. It'll hurt right now. But next week, you'll look back and you'll find yourself stronger and more grounded and down to earth, because that's what real humility is. So back in August of 1995, the renovation work here at St. Joseph's was completed. The entrances to the church were updated. How many of you were here before that and you remember the 3 entrances at the very front there? And how many of you were not here before that and have no idea what I'm talking about? And I have no idea what I'm talking about besides looking at pictures of what things used to be. But there was a lot of work that was done in this church. That beautiful stained glass at the back was put in. We had additional lighting put in. The bells were repaired, among plenty of other things. So that rededication happened on August 27th in 1995. And so that's why we celebrate this anniversary today. And I just wanted to say work is still going on today. If you haven't noticed, there's lots of landscaping going on around our church. We discovered that there's some possible water damage coming in, so we need to change the landscaping around and try and keep this building as strong as possible. The steeple has been being tuck-pointed recently. The month of September will see us celebrating lots of services, by the way, over in the school gym. Because some of the floorboards down here are too far apart for today's standards. So the whole floor is going to be taken up. We're going to add extra floorboards, and then we got new carpeting coming in. The work never ends. Stuff just keeps on going, but it will make sure that this can be a place of worship and prayer for many years to come. So I'd invite you to please bow your heads and join me in this prayer. The work that was completed in August of 1995, we remember and give thanks for today. We know the words of the psalm, "If the Lord does not build the house, in vain do its builders labor." So let us thank God for this day on which we commemorate the successful completion of the construction projects and the rededication of St. Joseph Church as a place for prayer and worship of God. All-powerful and all-merciful Father, you have created all things through your Son, and have made him the unshakable foundation of your kingdom. Grant that the work that was completed on this, your church, back in 1995, and the work that is being done now, may ensure a house of praise and worship to your name for years to come. May it contribute to our worship of you and the spread of the kingdom of Christ on earth, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God forever and ever. And at this time, I invite everybody to please rise. And let us with confidence profess our faith. I believe in one God, humbly acknowledging that all good gifts in our lives and our world come through the loving hands of our God, let us turn to him now with our needs and prayers.